Acer's Helios 300 was one of the best gaming laptops available last year, but they've already redesigned it as the Helios Neo 16 and made it worse in some ways. So let's find out the good and the bad in this review. It's got a dark metal finish on both the lid and interior, and this year they've toned down the gamer aesthetics by removing the RGB light bar on the front and making the logo on the lid more subtle. It no longer glows blue. The finish is a big fingerprint magnet, but it's easy to clean with a microfiber cloth. Overall build quality feels good. There's a bit less keyboard flex compared to last year's model. There's a groove along the front which makes one finger opening easy, and the screen goes back about 155 degrees, so more adjustment than last year's 140. The hinges felt solid, even when ripping the lid open fast. The Neo 16 is larger in every dimension compared to last year, partly due to its new bigger 16-inch screen. The laptop alone weighs about 5.7 pounds or under 2.6 kilos, increasing to 8.4 pounds or 3.8 kilos with the chunky 330 watt charger included. I'm really not sure why Acer didn't use a smaller, more portable power brick, considering the Neo 16 maxes out at RTX 4070 graphics. My Helios has Intel's Core i7-13700HX processor, Nvidia RTX 4060 graphics, 16 gigs of memory, and a 16-inch 165Hz screen, but you can check other configurations and current prices with the link below. The main difference between the Helios Neo 16, which we're reviewing here, and the regular Helios 16, so without the Neo in the name, is that the Neo version is meant to be a cheaper option. The Neo is a little bigger in all dimensions, it's a little heavier, and its max specs don't go quite as high. There's a 720p camera above the screen, and there's no IR for Windows Hello Face Unlock. Here's how the camera and microphones look and sound, and as you can see, the visual quality isn't very good. And this is what it sounds like while typing on the keyboard. The keyboard has 4 zones of RGB backlighting, and all keys and secondary functions get lit up. Key brightness can be changed between 4 levels or turned off with the F11 and F12 shortcut keys. Colors and effects can be customized through Acer's Predator Sense software under the Pulsar lighting tab. The keyboard is the same as last year's model, as far as I can tell. The keys have a clicky feel, and I liked typing on it, but the shorter right shift might annoy some. The power button is part of the keyboard, but an accidental press doesn't do anything. You have to hold it for a while, and then Acer's software asks what you want to happen next. The touchpad is a little bigger than last year's model, and it feels great. Nice and smooth with accurate clicks. The left has a gigabit Ethernet port, USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A port, micro SD card slot, and a 3.5mm audio combo jack, while the right has 2 more USB Type A ports, faster 3.2 Gen 2 this time, and a Kensington lock slot at the back. The rest is on the back. From left to right, we've got the power input, HDMI 2.1 output, and 2 Thunderbolt 4 Type-C ports with USB 3.2 Gen 2. Instead of having useful port icons on the back, Acer have instead chosen to spell out Predator in Morse code. I had to constantly turn the laptop and look behind it to plug stuff in, which was disappointing as there's clearly space to make the experience better. But instead, they chose form over function. Compared to last year's Helios 300, the new Neo 16 has an extra Type-C port and a micro SD card slot, but it's missing the mini display port, though I'm not sure how popular that is anyway. Both Type-C ports on the back can be used to charge the laptop, and both of those, as well as the HDMI port, all connect directly to the Nvidia graphics, bypassing Optimus, and that happens whether the integrated graphics are enabled or disabled. We also confirmed the HDMI port could run our 4K LG B9 TV at 120Hz 12-bit with G-Sync. Getting inside requires removing 11 Phillips head screws, all the same length. It was easy enough to open with some pry tools. I'll leave a link to the ones I use below. For some reason, the battery isn't screwed in like other laptops. It's not missing screws, there just aren't screw holes for it, so it just sits there. I suppose this is fine as the bottom panel keeps it in position, but you need to be aware of it it if you open it while holding it sideways like I did. Once inside, we've got the loose battery down the front, 2 memory slots just above, installed SSD on the left next to the Wi-Fi 6 card, and a spare M.2 slot on the right. The 512GB PCIe Gen 4 SSD had great read speeds, but for some reason, the writes were much lower. A good Gen 3 drive can almost get 3 times higher in sequential writes. The micro SD card was similar, good for the reads and lower on the writes, which is probably fine as I imagine most people using it are dumping photos and video off the card onto the laptop rather than the other way. The card clicks in and sits the whole way into the machine, so you'll need some fingernails to get it in and out. Wi-Fi speed was fine, but a lower result compared to other laptops with killer Wi-Fi, and not as good compared to last year's Helios 300. The upgradability score is good. We can change both memory slots, Wi-Fi, and both M.2 storage slots, which can both fit double-sided drives no problem, something one of the slots in last year's model could not fit. The speakers are found down the front on the left and right sides. They sound pretty average for a gaming laptop, a bit tinny with minimal bass. Not great. I thought last year's Helios sounded a bit better. The latency mon results were bad, but there is a known NVIDIA driver issue that can increase this. Speaking of sounds, by default it's got this crazy obnoxious boot up sound. Fortunately, you can disable it through software or BIOS. The Helios is powered by a 4-cell 90Wh battery, but there aren't any software features to automatically lower the screen's refresh rate or disable the overdrive mode when you unplug the charger. It lasted for 4 hours and 41 minutes in my normal YouTube video playback test, but it wouldn't surprise me if we could crack 5 hours by manually swapping the screen to 60Hz. I had to cancel the game test despite the battery still having 31% charge remaining, because the frame rate dipped down to 5 FPS and was unusable. Last year's Helios was better in both regards. The Helios also has this message from our sponsor, Pulseway. If managing your IT infrastructure feels like a maze, allow Pulseway to be your compass. Pulseway's patch management allows you to keep your server and desktop operating systems up to date and safe from security threats. Pulseway can even update a wide range of third-party apps. To top it all off, you can even schedule an automatic reboot if needed to complete the update process. As someone who had to wake up at 3 AM in my past system administrator life to run kernel updates, let me tell you, I'd much rather let Pulseway take care of it. So make your life easier and start your free trial with the link below. Back to the laptop. Let's check out thermals next. It's got 2 fans, one is metal and a couple of heat pipes shared between the CPU and GPU along with liquid metal. The bottom panel has plenty of air intake holes directly over the fans, and air gets exhausted out of both the left and right sides as well as out of the corners on the back. There are also some air vents above the keyboard. Acer's Predator Sense software allows us to change between different performance modes, which from lowest to highest are quiet, balanced, performance, and turbo. Turbo mode applies this overclock to the GPU by default with no option of tuning it. The next fan control tab lets us max out the fans or set a custom speed as a percentage for each of the 2 fans. Fan control is not available in quiet mode because it enables NVIDIA Whisper mode, and turbo mode needs the charger connected. There's also this button above the keyboard. You can change what it does in software to either have it enable or disable turbo mode, or cycle through all 4 performance modes. The color of the button also changes based on the performance mode currently in use, so you can quickly identify what mode you're in, and the keyboard flashes briefly at the same time to make it more obvious. I didn't like that performance and turbo modes were purple and pink. I found it hard to tell which was which because it was so similar. The internal temperatures were cold when just sitting there idle. The rest of the results are from combined CPU and GPU stress tests, which aim to represent a worst-case full-load scenario. Turbo mode was noticeably warmer compared to performance, but there was no thermal throttling, so no problem. The cooling pad I test with, linked below the video, was able to lower temps significantly, but if you instead want to close the lid and dock the laptop, you don't have to worry about it getting hotter. The clock speeds were pretty much the same too, so no issues docking the laptop. For some reason, performance was actually a little lower with the cooling pad connected, which would also contribute to its much lower temperature. We can see here that the CPU was running at 85 watts with the cooling pad connected. I'm not sure why this was the case, but I was able to replicate it multiple times. It's not really that big of a deal, because 85 watts on the CPU with the GPU maxed out is quite impressive anyway. 100 watts without the cooling pad is just crazy good. The Nvidia control panel says the RTX 4060 can run up to 140 watts, but I found it to run closer to 97 in the real world due to Nvidia's voltage limit. There wasn't that much of a performance difference between the three top performance modes in terms of FPS with an actual game though. Meanwhile, silent mode was still hitting 60 FPS at this above 1440p resolution while running around 39 decibels. Relatively quiet. The CPU can use more power and hit thermal throttling when the GPU is idle, like in Cinebench. There's no difference in single-core performance with the different modes, while higher modes mean better multi-core performance thanks to more power, faster fans, and better cooling. This is the first time we've ever had an i7-13700HX, and it has the same amount of P and E cores as a 12th gen i9HX chip from last gen, though some of those were able to do better. A lower tier i7-13700H in the MSI GP77 was able to perform about the same, slightly better actually, despite having 2 fewer P cores, because that laptop design was able to feed the CPU more power to make up for its lack of cores. Performance lowers if we unplug the charger and instead run purely off of battery power, and we're limited to performance mode without the charger. Performance lowers significantly. It's now one of the slower results out of the same selection of laptops previously. Most laptops I test are in the low 30°C range on the keyboard at idle, but the Helios was quite a bit below this. It's still fairly cool with the stress test running. The warm spot near the arrow keys was hardly warm. The higher balanced mode wasn't really much different, still cool on the areas you need to touch. Performance mode was very cool. I was quite impressed when I tested this. And then the highest turbo mode was much the same, but it is very loud now. Let's have a listen. The fans were audible when just sitting there idle, and then get louder in the higher modes when under load, as expected. Turbo mode was only ever so slightly louder if we manually set the fans to max, so they're basically maxed out in this workload anyway. And the cooling pad did not help lower the fan speed. Like a lot of laptops this year, the Helios moves to a bigger 16-inch screen with a 16:10 aspect ratio, so it's got more pixels vertically than before and less of a bottom chin. Color gamut is fine for a gaming laptop, but nothing amazing for creators. It gets quite bright though, above 500 nits at 100%, and it lowers at a steady rate, unlike Lenovo laptops, which dip harshly at higher percentage levels. The Predator Sense software has LCD overdrive enabled by default, which lowers response time. We're looking at 4.5 milliseconds for average gray to gray response time with overdrive on, which is below the 6.06 milliseconds needed for transitions to occur within the 165Hz refresh window. A good result. It's slower with overdrive off, as expected, but this removes the overshoot and undershoot. It's a good result when compared against other laptops, and more than 3 milliseconds faster compared to last year's Helios 300. One of the few ways this year's model is actually better. The total system latency is the amount of time between a mouse click and when a gunshot fire appears on the screen in CSGO. This time, it was more than 4 milliseconds faster compared to last year's model. Not much, but the newer Neo 16 may provide a subtle edge for competitive gamers. There is a muck switch, but it can only be changed through the BIOS. You won't need to do that though, because it's got Advanced Optimus too, so you can disable the integrated graphics through Nvidia's control panel. And it's got G-Sync too, but only when Optimus is off. Backlight bleed was minor. I never noticed it during normal use, but this will vary between laptops. Now let's find out how well the Helios Neo 16 with RTX 4060 actually performs in games. It costs 22% more money compared to last year's Helios 300 with RTX 3070 Ti, so surely it's gonna do better, right? Well, no. Cyberpunk 2077 was tested the same on all laptops, and I've got the Helios Neo 16 shown by the red highlight. At 1080p, it's right in line with other RTX 4060 laptops tested so far, though with a better 1% low, which may be due to the higher CPU power limit. That said, last year's Helios 300 with a lower tier CPU was better in that regard. At the higher 1440p resolution, it's still near a number of cheaper RTX 3070 Ti options from last year, including Acer's own Helios 300, which was actually performing better despite costing $280 less. Red Dead Redemption 2 was tested with the game's benchmark, and last year's cheaper Helios was ahead at 1080p too. All 3070 Ti results shown were, for that matter, which was not the case in the last game. This continues at the higher 1440p resolution, where last year's Helios now has a larger 12% lead. Again, in control, there's not much difference between all 4060 results tested so far at 1080p. The 4060 in the Helios is 14% faster compared to a 3060 laptop, but cheaper 3070 Ti options are still ahead. And then it's the same sort of deal at 1440p. Last gen 30 series really isn't too different to the new 4060/4070 options. It's only when you spend more for a 4080 or 4090 laptop that you start seeing the big gen-on-gen improvements, which I'm sure is exactly how Nvidia planned it. Here are the 3D Mark results for those that find them useful. Now for some content creator tests. Adobe Photoshop was tested with the Puget Systems benchmark tool, and it's not too different to last year's Helios, though considering that has an older CPU, I expected the newer Neo 16 to come out ahead. I've got less results in DaVinci Resolve because we've finally swapped over to a newer version. Anyway, the Helios is the best 4060 results so far, and the 4070s weren't much ahead. No Adobe Premiere for a while, as the benchmark tool had a big update and we need to collect fresh data. The 4070 and 4060 laptops are even closer together in Blender, which is weird considering this is a GPU-bound workload, at least with the older Blender 3.2. We're going to swap to the newer 3.4 going forward, and in this one, there was a bit more of a gap between the 4060s and 4070s, but not much. We've also tested SpecView Perf, which tests out various professional 3D workloads. Acer's BIOS looks cool, but there isn't a whole lot of customization available through here compared to other brands like Lenovo and especially MSI, who let you change almost anything you can imagine. Linux support was tested with an Ubuntu 23.04 live CD. By default, the keyboard, touchpad, speakers, Ethernet, and Wi-Fi all worked fine, but the camera was not recognized. Keyboard shortcuts for adjusting screen brightness, volume, and keyboard brightness worked too, but the keys are all static blue. You can't change the color or effect without software. Pricing and availability will change over time, so check the link below the video for updates and current sales. And if this laptop does go on sale, we'll be sure to add it to our gaminglaptop.deals website. We update that every day to include all of the latest sales. So check that out regularly to get the best deal on your next gaming laptop. At the time of recording, the same configuration of Helios Neo 16 that we've tested here goes for $1,580 US, which seems a bit pricey for an RTX 4060 laptop compared to others, especially when compared to last year's Acer Helios 300 with 3070 Ti, as I mentioned earlier. This thing frequently goes on sale for $1,300. So if you just care about getting the best game FPS for the dollar, it's difficult to recommend the newer 4060. So the main differences between this year's Helios Neo 16 and last year's Helios 300 are that this one has a bigger 16-inch screen, and that newer screen also has a faster response time and it gets brighter. The color gamut isn't quite as good compared to last year's version, but it's still plenty for gaming. Content creators might want to look elsewhere though. The Neo 16 can fit two double-sided M.2 drives now, and it's got a bigger and better touchpad. But last year's Helios 300 lasted longer on battery, had better sounding speakers, it had perky RGB control on the keyboard instead of 4-zone, and of course, most importantly of all, it had a light bar on the front. All things considered, Acer's new Helios Neo 16 is a pretty good gaming laptop. The main problem is that Nvidia's new mid-range RTX 40 series GPUs just make it difficult for them to compete against their own models from last year with RTX 30 series. Is it worth spending 22% more money to get the 4060 instead instead of the 3070 Ti for frame generation? Maybe, maybe not. You have to decide how much that feature is worth to you. And for the record, I do think that frame generation is a nice feature in supported games. It just makes them feel smoother to play. But it's not in a whole lot of titles just yet. I'm sure that will change in the future, and the 4060 price will probably get lower too. But for now, it's just kinda hard to justify compared to the cheaper 3070 Ti model. You can see how the RTX 4060 laptop GPU performs in games with features like frame generation, DLSS, and ray tracing in this video next. I've tested it in 25 games at 1080p and 1440p resolutions to show you what sort of performance is on offer. So I'll see you in that one next.